Hello and welcome to the another online session for Cambridge Prep class. This is teacher Rekha and today we are going to talk about writing again. But in today's class we will move on to the next part, which is part 2, and learn about writing an effective article. So without further ado, let's get started with today's class. But before that, just for your reference, here I have included one sample answer for the email task that we did in the last class. So you can pause the video here and go through the email to get a better understanding of how you should write an email for task 1. This is just a sample answer, which means your email should not match to it word by word, but if it's somewhat similar to it, then you are doing it correctly. So take your time, pause the video here and go through the whole email, and then we can continue with the today's class. Okay, so now let's start with the summary about task 2, which is writing an article. Is it a mandatory task? Is it required? No, it's not. You will get two options in which you have to choose one. Again, the word count is around 100 words. Make sure you check the number of words. Main characteristics for this task is title is needed, which is a must. Do not miss giving a title to your article. Interesting, engaging language should be used throughout the task. A structure of your article should be like this. First thing needs to be the introduction part, then main paragraphs, and then at last the ending of the article. Language should be interesting. Try to use adjectives and adverbs. Some sentences should be in the question form as well. As I already told you, in the PET exam, you always have to write an email, but you can choose if you want to write an article or a story. So, in an article task, you get a topic from a website or magazine, and there is some information or questions that you have to write about. Also, your language should normally be between neutral and informal. So, what does a typical article task look like? In every writing task in the PET exam, there are a few things that you have to analyze before you can start to put your pen to paper. What is the situation? What do I have to include in my article? Who is going to read my article? It is very important and helpful to answer these questions first because you get a lot of useful information. So writing the article becomes easier from the beginning. A typical article task might look like this. This is an example. You see this notice on an English language website. Articles wanted. Films. What kind of films do you enjoy? Do you prefer watching them at cinema or at home? Why? Write an article answering these questions and we will put it on our website. Now you have to write your article. Now that we have a task, let's answer the questions from earlier. Firstly, your article needs to be about films, right? So what is the situation? In this case, the situation is that you have to write an article and it needs to be about the films. And secondly, second question, which is like, what do I have to include in my article? In this case, there are two main questions that you have to answer in your text. Number one, films you enjoy. And number two, if you prefer going to the cinema or watching films at home with reasons. Okay. And then last but not the least, who is going to read my article? The readers of the English language website are the people who are going to read your article, right? So that means your language should be neutral to informal because it is not your because it is not for your friends, but neither for your boss or teacher. In neutral English, as I already told you in the last class, you can use contractions like I am or she is, phrasal verbs or informal punctuation, right? But no slang words or anything that is not in the dictionary should not be used. Now that we know what we have to include in our article, the next step would be to know how about the organization of the article. You can always organize your articles in a similar way. This makes it a lot easier for you because you will know how to complete this kind of writing task step by step. In the last part, we saw that there are normally two main questions that you have to cover. In our example, the two questions are what kind of films do you enjoy and do you prefer watching them at the cinema or at home? And then you have to tell why. As there are two main points, it is probably a good idea to have two main paragraphs in your article. In addition, you should always have an title and a final sentence. So overall, we get to four parts in total. Title, what kind of films do you enjoy? Do you prefer watching them at the cinema or at home? And then you need to tell the reason why. And then the last one is the final sentence. This works for every article writing task. So you can relax and really focus on what you want to say instead of worrying about the structure of your text. These are the different parts of an article. Now we are going to see how we can deal with this task. Look at the task again or look at the question again that we saw earlier and remember what we have to do. With this in mind, are you ready to solve this article problem? So the first thing is title. Every good article has a title. When you read a newspaper, magazine, or website, you always find titles or sometimes even subheadings, right, at the top of an article. Try to make the title interesting so the reader wants to see what you have to say. For example, in our task from earlier, we could choose one of the following ideas: films I like and how I watch them, how to best watch the films you love, home or cinema, how do you watch your favorite films. You can see that the topic is clear and it creates some interest for the reader. However, don't feel stressed. If you just use the title films, you won't lose any marks. It is more important to give your article some kind of title. Now we moved on to the main paragraphs. The main paragraphs are the most important pieces of your article and you should always think about these two things. Does the paragraph talk about one of the main questions in the task? Do I use good language? Like neutral, informal, linking words, good grammar, and interesting vocabulary. One of the most important things in the writing exam is that you have to answer the questions in the task very clearly. Don't talk about things that are unrelated, but focus on the topic. An example for one of the main paragraphs could look like this. I know many people who love animated or romantic films, but for me, there is nothing better than an amazing drama or adventure movie like Indiana Jones because I'm a big fan of stories with a fascinating plot. In my opinion, watching a film at home isn't the same as going to the cinema to enjoy a great movie on a huge screen with popcorn and cola. If it wasn't so expensive, I would go every week, right? You can see that I answered the questions about what films I enjoy. I only focused on the question and gave some examples. In the first paragraph, I talk about film genres, right? Like animated, romantic, drama, adventure. as well as one specific film, Indiana Jones. I also tried to include some interesting grammar. For example, I know many people who dash 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 nothing better than, and some interesting vocabulary as well, like amazing drama, I'm a big fan of, fascinating plot. On top of that, I used different linking words to connect my ideas, such as who, but, because. In the second paragraph, I say how I prefer watching a film, going to the cinema, and I explain why. Because of the huge screen, popcorn, and cola. I also included a conditional sentence for good grammar. If it wasn't so expensive, I would go every week. This sounds like a lot of information, but if you practice regularly, it will become easier and easier for you to do the same. As soon as you finish your main paragraphs, you should end your article with a nice final sentence. It can be a little bit funny or surprising, but you can also just summarize your article. Remember, the more interesting your article is, the better it is for your marks. So, if you want to give me some money to go to the cinema more often, or to tell me which you prefer, the cinema or the TV screen, leave a comment. In my final sentence, I try to be funny and I speak directly to the reader. This is a good way of making your article more interesting because the reader feels as if they are part of the text. So, this is an example for the task or for the question that we saw earlier. So, you can do something like this. You can pause the video here and go through the article by yourself. Now we discussed everything that is very important for writing an article for task 2. Now it's your time to practice your writing. So please make sure you finish your assignment on Google Forms and submit it on time. And if you have any query related to today's topic or any other topic, you can come and ask to me. So this was all for today's class. Hope you got it clearly and see you all in next class. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.